Spoilers for Spider-Man 2. I finally reached the end of the game. It would make sense for them to reveal who Miles' mom is dating now, and I heard she's in the ending cutscene at Peter's house, so at the table, so he should be there as well. Okay. Wait. Ganke is dating Miles' mom! So, Spider-Man 2 released last week and it is awesome. I mean, it's fucking everything. It's got parties, it's got abilities, it's got a good story, great gameplay, great villains, great plots, great subplots, and generally everything is fantastic. I'm gonna review Spider-Man 2 in terms of the story, the gameplay, then after that I'll answer the question in the thumbnail, which is if this game is better than Arkham City. So, let's begin with the story. So, Spider-Man's 2 story is similar to Spider-Man's 2018's story in the sense that for the start/bulk of the game, there is one storyline, and for the third act, there is a different storyline with a different villain. Difference between this game and the previous one is that while in the first game at the start we had Martin Lee and then we ended with Doc Ock and the Sinister Six, we have two plot lines at the start with the Craven plotline, which is for Peter, and Martin Lee plotline, which is for Miles. So I'm gonna talk about them first before going into the finale plotline, which is the Venom plotline, starting with Craven. The Craven plotline in this game was amazingly built up, amazingly executed, and amazingly finished. At the start, Craven is shown to be the best there is at hunting, so he can't find an equal. Then he goes to New York in order to find one. In New York, the first thing he does is kill Scorpion and survive Scorpion's sting, which even Peter struggled with in the first game. After that, he infects Dr. Connors with the lizard serum, because bro really wants an op, and then kills Peter. If not for the symbiote, Craven would have killed Peter. Bro's a straight up menace. But of course, Peter gets the symbiote. I'll talk about this motherfucker in a minute, don't worry, but back to Craven. So, after this, Craven straight up bodies Peter and learns the symbiote's weakness and tracks down Peter using the serum that Peter took from him. Then, he sends a bunch of his goons to decimate Emily May Foundation. Bro's really trying to get on the symbiote's list of ops, and then tracks Peter again to his crib after he defeats Lizard, and then bro kidnaps Miles and sends him up against his biggest op, which he knew, by the way, was his biggest op because of this scene. Then he traps Peter and uses Miles as motivation for Peter to escape, then fights Peter in one of the best boss fights in the game, which leads to him asking Peter to kill him, and when Peter doesn't do it, he fucking bites the symbiote! Now there are two people who know what the symbiote tastes like, Mary Jane and Craven. Damn. And after this, he leaves and looks for a Venom to kill him in another one of the best boss fights in the game, which ends with one of the best moments of the game. Seriously, this is a better scene than any scene in the two Venom movies and in Spider-Man 3. So overall, the resume of fights, character moments, and overall off-screen and on-screen feats is insane. I mean, bro killed half of the Sinister Six and Shocker mostly off-screen. My only problem with Craven is his motivation. He has one, which is dying of a sickness, and he doesn't want to die in a sick bed, but in a fight, which on paper is great and unique. But in the game, it's barely mentioned, maybe one or two hints max, before Peter says he somehow knows it in a fight against Craven. But other than that, Craven shreds Martin Lee and competes with Doc Ock in terms of how good he is. He's that good. Now, moving on to the Martin Lee plotline with Miles. Now, this plotline, despite being introduced at around the same time, maybe even a little earlier than the Craven plotline, this plotline doesn't get a lot of screen time. Which makes sense, don't get me wrong, it's just that I don't have a lot to say about it other than I really like what they did with Lee. Like, we got a more calmer side to him, maybe even the side he used to build Fist, the side that Peter and May loved and respected. And we also see his reaction to what he did, especially since he learned that in Miles' eyes, Martin Lee is the same figure as Norman in his eyes. So overall, I like what they did with Martin in this game. Maybe it's not as good as what they did in the previous game, but hey, I still loved it. Plus, he gave us two awesome dream sequences and a cool new suit for Peter, two new symbiote abilities, and an in-universe reason for us to be able to use the symbiote abilities after we take off the symbiote. So, overall, I liked his inclusion in this game. Now, before we move on to Venom, we have to move to the other symbiote user in this story, Peter. Yes, I said symbiote because everyone who gets this suit is him. Jesus Christ, that sounded way too fucking corny. And so, symbiote Peter in this game was a fucking amazing. It was a great representation of the symbiote, where he wasn't really an asshole. I mean, he wasn't.
Why don't you pop some more pills and say what you really feel?
But compared to the other symbiote Spider-Man, he's extremely nice. But what he is in this story is more irresponsible, which is fucking genius. Like, Peter's main belief is that with great power comes great responsibility. So for him to be less responsible while wearing the symbiote suit is something that I don't know how we didn't think of earlier. It's the perfect example of Peter being everything Spider-Man shouldn't be whilst wearing the black suit, but the black suit convincing him that he is what Spider-Man should be is again genius. And it all ends with the Peter and Miles boss fight, and that's the best way it could have ended. And one more thing about the fight is the dialogue and the music is goated as f***, and Peter's voice changing from Peter to Venom is a great addition. But now Peter's taking off the symbiote and is going to destroy it. But guess who appears? Harry.
We are not Harry. We are.
Venom in this game is great, and starting as Agent Venom was something no one was expecting. And you can feel during the mission and during the crimes where Harry appears that this is prime Spider-Maning. If nothing happened to Peter during that one mission and they stayed together as a team, they would have ended crime by the time EMF ended World Hunger. But of course, all good things must come to an end. So Peter dies, gets the symbiote, and then takes it off, and the symbiote goes back to Harry. And now we have Venom. Starting the third act / Venom's introduction with Venom gameplay is beyond genius. Now, I was one of the dumbasses who thought that we weren't gonna get Venom gameplay, so imagine my surprise when the Venom cutscene ends and we get immediately thrown into Venom combat. My jaw drops to the floor, and having the end of Venom combat being the second Kraven boss fight was amazing, and I'd like to point out that Kraven won. What Kraven wanted was not to die in a sick bed, but to die without his head. His thank you at the end really solidified this, and overall this scene was beyond amazing. To the lightning strike as soon as Venom roars, to Venom being all like, "What have I done?" as he goes to his mom's grave is f***ing incredible. But in terms of the overall third act, it isn't really that focused. However, despite that, when the goal is set to get the meteorite, the seat instantly gets laser focused and remains like that for the rest of the game. And also, despite me talking a bit trash about it, the third act before that was still a f***ing amazing. Like, I didn't expect them to go full Web of Shadows and beyond for the ending. The ending also gave us a satisfying conclusion to Lee's redemption arc and also allowed Miles to let go of the hate he had for him, while also giving Peter a new suit which was a complete counter to all the symbiotes. And speaking of Web of Shadows, some allies, or I guess one ally, gets turned into a symbiote which is Scream/MJ. Which I can bet is something that everyone didn't expect. Hell, half the people who played this game probably didn't know who Scream was as a character. So, not only did it introduce people to another symbiote character, but it also did it with, in my opinion, the best boss fight in the game. However, yeah, that is a pretty hot take. But back to the point, the third act was amazing, and its ending, / the game's ending, was incredible. I mean, we go from an MJ stealth section to a Peter versus Venom boss fight, to a Miles versus Venom boss fight, to a bunch of QTs. And if that doesn't sound uninteresting to you, then go check it out on YouTube. I promise you, you won't regret it. It's incredible. One small thing I want to point out before I talk about the ending scenes is that this game kind of brings all the Venom and Spider-Man games full circle, in the sense that the first true Venom vs Spider-Man story, Ultimate Spider-Man, started with a Venom vs Peter boss fight on the Midtown High football field, and now in Spider-Man 2, 18 years later, during the Venom vs Peter section of the boss fight, one of the places where you can fight Venom is the Midtown High football field. Now to the ending scenes, filled with emotional acting, heartbreak, callbacks, and an actual healing of the world. Harry's death in this game was amazing, as Peter for the past 1.5 hours has been convinced that he could save Harry, and during the end, when he realizes that he can't, he has an even worse reaction than what he had with May's death at the end of the first game. And so, when Miles, at least for a few moments, brings Harry back to life, you could tell by the look on Peter's face that he wanted to say a lot more than thank you, but didn't have enough time to say it. However, as any good Spider-Man story should, this story ends on a positive note, with MJ having quit the Daily Bugle and creating a new online web series called The New Normal, and Peter quitting being Spider-Man, and Miles getting into a new college and dating Hailey. It should remind us of all the hardship we face, all the difficult that we have to do, all the hard choices we have to make. They aren't all our lives. They are a part of it, sure, and we can never change that. But still, in between the sad moments, there will always be happy and fun moments. Why the f did I write it like this? Now everyone's at my school is gonna think I'm a cliche. So, now that we've went over the story, I think it's time we went over the gameplay. Now, fair warning, I haven't played the game. Now, yeah, for the story part, I wasn't pulled out of my ass. I've seen the entire story on YouTube, every second of it. But you can't really judge the game's gameplay if you haven't played the game. So I'm going to be going off things I've heard about the game and just from what I've seen to the playthroughs I've seen. So, from what I've seen, the gameplay is amazing. Now, you have your basic combat, which despite being improved a little bit from the previous games with a few new moves, it's practically the same. The big changes come in the new abilities and the new gadgets. In terms of the abilities, you have a total of 18. 10 for Peter, 8 for Miles. But you can only have 4 equipped at a certain time. And these abilities aren't just takedowns in disguise. They provide utility like knocking people back, shooting them up in the air, and doing massive AoE and AoT damage. And plus they're super fun to chain together. And in terms of the gadgets, they got a massive overhaul. No longer do you have what feels like 48 gadgets that don't make any sense how Peter made them and are to switch between. There are now 4 not that logically breaking gadgets that you can switch between in an instance, along with your basic web shooters. The realism isn't perfect. How does the episode send people up with beams, but it's still way more realistic than a gravity well and a suspension matrix. So, we've reviewed Spider-Man 2, and now we answer the thumbnail. Arkham vs Marvel, Rocksteady vs Insomniac, Spider-Man vs Batman, sequel vs sequel, 2011 vs 2013, Spider-Man 2 vs Batman Arkham City. And which game is better? In my opinion, it's Spider-Man 2, but I can understand why someone else would prefer City. City is a masterpiece in terms of writing and gave us the definitive Joker, Ra's al Ghul, and Mr. Freeze. And we haven't gotten a story anything like it since then, with an ending that made even the biggest haters' jaw drop. But Spider-Man 2 is the only good Craven story outside the comics and gives us gameplay that is debatably the best gameplay in a comic book game, with set pieces that are insane. I mean, we go to the antique for fuck's sake, and I'm not saying Arkham City is bad, far from it, but City isn't that impressive in terms of gameplay, and since this is a game, the gameplay is first to second priority. So since Spider-Man has better combat and about the same level of story, it's undeniable, for me at least, that Spider-Man 2 is better than Arkham City. So, that's it for this video. Next video I will debunk a Spider-Man inverse scale that I've seen that I don't think is very good. Final thing before you leave. Drink water, eat an apple, talk to your family and subscribe. Anyways, thank you for watching and bye.